All right, I think this is going. Oh, okay, guys. So maybe this is live. I think it is. Um, well, I don't have any. Doesn't my stream manager doesn't show any viewers yet? It takes it a few seconds to catch up, I think. So, um, if you're here, that's great. We'll just take a few minutes to get settled in and start it up here. So, good morning. That's Aaron, I guess. Hi. Um, yeah, streaming again. It is a good morning in the sense that the sun is shining. That's always nice. It's always easier to feel optimistic about things whenever the sun is shining, I think. So it is shining at the moment. I think it's going to get cloudy later, so I'm going to go take a walk after this so that we can get so I can enjoy the sunshine while I can. Okay, good. So Austin just is saying that the audio is a little better today. That's good. I'm at home, as you can probably tell. So I'm on a different setup entirely, using the same camera but a different computer to broadcast it, and of course my home network instead of my the campus network. So this should be doing okay, I guess. Yeah, it's good to see you all. Good morning, Von Wolf. I don't know who that is, but good morning. Yeah, so I don't know how long we'll go. Maybe 20 minutes again today. I obviously did this once already with the 10 a.m. section, and a couple of big things to go over, but mainly more of an update and kind of things continue to evolve. I mean, as we've now learned since we last talked, campus is going to remain closed for the semester. So many of you may be okay. That's Brian. That's what I figured. Maybe the what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so the campus being closed, obviously, that's going to be really a challenge, right? I mean, um, they are discouraging us from going to campus, but they're not locking us out or anything yet. But they are, I understand, trying to help you all figure out when to move out if you live on campus. So that's got to be a lot to deal with. And I think Amber just posted that, yeah, like it's overwhelming, right? I mean, it's something that on top of everything else, you've got to deal with moving, and I can imagine is very stressful. So as far as this class, the big theme that I'm trying to keep in mind as I revise and adapt things is to keep it as simple as possible in terms of what you need to do. And I've got a couple of things here. I just wrote this up. This is a checklist of the things that you need to do for the rest of the semester. I just wrote this, so I need to kind of link it in a few places. But I also wrote an FAQ document. So this is the frequently asked questions. I'll probably just make this the homepage for the campus course. But just to kind of clarify some things you may be wondering, and this can be like I'll keep updating this page so you can come back to it later on. Okay, so first of all, do you have to attend the live streams? No, it's not compulsory, but I think it's good to have contact, so I recommend it. I mean, that's a helpful thing. I think one thing I wanted to ask you all is, there are of course different formats. You're probably using Zoom in some of your classes, so I'm kind of curious how that's going. There's also, you can do conferences. There's a video conferencing tool that's hooked directly into Canvas called Big Blue Button, and I tried that out earlier. You may have seen a notice for that. Basically, like, I don't mind talking, but I really want to hear from you all too, because this idea of us being a community as a class is something that I think we can experience better if we're all talking, as opposed to you all just listening to me. So yeah, so in the chat, let me know what you think about that idea of a Zoom kind of thing where we can all talk to each other and see each other. Um, I haven't done that before, but I'm sure we could figure it out, or I could figure it out. I'm curious how that's going in other classes if you are doing that. But anyway, so whatever the case, the live stuff, the video stuff is not compulsory. I can't require that because you all may have different types of availability. You may not be able to get to the internet reliably or whatever. So I don't want to require that. In place of that, I think real-time chat is also a decent way to have a community, and so Slack can facilitate that. Then also, German class is using video conferencing or voice conferencing at Canvas. Okay. But yeah, otherwise, the asynchronous option would be another way to do it too, where it would be discussion threads in Canvas and Slack to some extent. But I think Canvas is a bit easier as far as organizing asynchronous things because it can just be a discussion, just a question, a discussion thread that is a question, and then you answer it right there, and then you reply to someone else's, that kind of thing. So I kind of prefer Canvas for asynchronous. I think that will work a bit easier. In any case, those are kind of the lower level things in terms of my class as far as your participation. So I wanted the FAQ and the checklist to kind of emphasize the higher level stuff that I want to make sure you get out of this semester. Okay, so the other big thing that you'll see here on the FAQ page is the due dates for everything in this class. So other than the weekly things, I do still want you doing weekly summaries of your work. Everything else, the due dates are suspended. They're not in play. I'm going to leave them in Canvas because Canvas doesn't work well when you take due dates out. I want you all to be mindful of these things and make sure you complete them. So the due date kind of keeps that on your to-do list, so to speak. But everything is due May 1st. So May 1st is would have been the Wednesday of, or it is, I guess, still the Wednesday of finals week. And then my grades, I have to finalize everything by May 5th. So I do need it by May 1st so that I can work through it all, have time to work through it all. But yeah, as far as when you do which assignments, it really doesn't matter to me, other than I did build them with a sequence on purpose. And so I would recommend going through them in the order that's there, but a lot of it is work you can complete on your own. So you're welcome to complete that at your own pace. So let me show you some of that. Go back here to the same thing up in 2 tabs, so that's not necessary. Where was I? Oh yeah, this checklist. I need to make this, I'll put this checklist page into the FAQ or something. Canvas is being slow. Okay, so the digital archaeology project, it still exists. It's different now and scaled back a bit, and on your own, obviously, not a group project unless you want to coordinate with somebody. That's perfectly fine. The digital methodology project, well, yeah, I need to update the instructions a little bit, but it is like the other module projects. So the creativity and the culture modules, this is just a different set of modules for you to look at, and these focus on using a computer to investigate a question or solve a problem. And so there's digital journalism, text analysis, network analysis, image visualization, which I'm going to change that one's name to cultural analytics because I think that's more accurate, and then yeah, mapping. So each of these has a different set of tools that are useful for it, and I think I'll do a more in-depth explanation of those a bit later, but that's where you can go find that information now. If you want to go ahead and get started on one of them, that's fine. Your sequence of work logistically will be pretty similar. So first of all, look through them all, decide which one you want to do, post in the Slack channel for that module that you want to do that one, and then do a blog post explaining your goals for it, work on it for a while, and then when you're done, post a blog post with your results. That's something that it was originally going to take 2 or I think 3 weeks, but take whatever time you need. If you need a little bit more, a little bit less, that's fine too. So I am going to. So this is the checklist of the projects. There is one that you may see in Canvas, the digital scholarship project, or sharing your digital scholarship. I'm just going to leave that one off. I'm just going to ignore that project. It's just too much. I mean, I'm trying to keep things simple for you all, and I don't want to add to that. So that's the project where I was going to teach you HTML and get you coding. That's something I like doing, and I would certainly enjoy doing. So if you would like, I can do that. But I think just to keep things simple, let's just kind of take that assignment off the table for now. Or not for now, let's just take it off, right? I don't want to leave that question open. So we're just ignoring that project because it's a little bit less important than the other things. So yeah, that's it for that. So of course, as I'm talking, if you have any questions or comments, put it in the Twitch chat or Slack. Seems like a few of you are in both places, so that's fine. Yeah, okay. So what was I going to say? Oh yeah, the other thing. So I'm at home, and hopefully, the audio is coming through okay. I should have mentioned that earlier. If it's not, then let me know. Because I'm at home, I'm in my basement right now. You may see people coming and going. My kids are all upstairs right now. They're home. We homeschool, so they're upstairs doing their schoolwork, and sometimes that gets noisy. So I apologize in advance if they start yelling. My son is he has a hard time. Sometimes he gets frustrated and starts yelling. So what was that? Oh, that was sorry. It was like a tone. I heard a sound. I think it was the piano upstairs. Um, yeah, so there's that, and people may be coming and going, but that's okay. Right, it's how it goes. This home streaming situation I was going to tell you is I was hoping to use a PC that I'm you can't see it, but I'm looking at it. It's kind of in pieces over here. It is a decently equipped PC for gaming, like 5 years ago, and it worked okay for that. And it would work okay for streaming, I think. The issue is that it doesn't work. So it had a electrical surge. We had a surge in our house, and it killed a bunch of our electronics. It blew right through the surge protector and killed this computer. So about 6 months ago, I just thought I'd start seeing if I could fix it, and I did a little debugging, and I theorized that it was the power supply that was the problem. So I bought a new power supply, put it in, and it kind of worked, or like it would receive power, but I couldn't get I couldn't boot anything. So I just kind of set it aside, and I thought, oh, I'll try it later. Um, so later was yesterday, and I sort of got it all out and hooked it all back up, and I was like, well, let's just see if I could figure out where the problem is. And I just turned it on, and it just came on. It booted. The hard drive was corrupted, but I was able to repair it, and booted, and it was working okay. It wasn't working great. The Wi-Fi, I couldn't get the Wi-Fi to work, so I was working on it over there in my workbench area. I brought it into this room where I am now, where the router is, so I could plug it directly into the router and try to troubleshoot the connection. Um, but when I brought it in here, now it doesn't work at all. It doesn't come on at all. Like I turned it on, it gets power, the fans kick on, but there's no BIOS, there's no boot screen, there's nothing. It doesn't send any picture out. So that could be a couple issues. It doesn't seem to be the hard drive doesn't seem to be spinning. So I think it's still the hard drive is the issue. So to troubleshoot this, I'm going to try to see if I can find another hard drive to stick in there, or if I can boot from a USB drive. The Otherwise, I'm just going to take it apart and kind of build it back piece by piece, trying it each time, and then whenever it finally works again, that'll tell me which component failed. Because I think there is another hardware component failure somewhere in there. I just need to figure out which one it is, and then decide if I want to replace that or not, depending on if it's expensive. Because I already spent like $50 on this power supply, and if nothing else works on it, or if the motherboard's fried, then I'll just probably like build a new system around it. Get a new motherboard and build a new system. Maybe, I don't know. It's honestly it's not something I've really missed for the last couple years that this has been out of commission. So maybe I won't bother. But I have this power supply that's a pretty good power supply. So maybe I'll try to sell that. I don't know. Anyway, so that's something that may help me stream a little bit better, and also in a quieter part of the house. Like right now, I've had to tell my family not to come downstairs, and that's cutting off a lot of access to the house. So I have a more private space I can do things if I can get the Wi-Fi working. Anyway, just kind of rambling a bit. Sorry about that. So FAQ, right? Live streams on Twitch if you can. I think it's good. I mean, whatever method we can, I think we should try to maintain a sense of community. And I mean, that's the hardest thing online, is having a sense of presence with a group. So let's do whatever we can and be patient with each other as we figure it out. Yeah. Yeah, so that's exactly what Allison's saying here in the chat. That's exactly what I'm going to try. It is. I mean, what makes me it does not have an integrated GPU, but the fact that I'm not even getting like a screen, like nothing's coming from it at all, makes me wonder about the GPU. Oh, actually, come to think of it, it might have an integrated, because I have two VGA ports on the back of it, and one of them is from the card, the GPU card. The other one is from the motherboard. So I should try that to bypass the GPU. I don't know. That's what I'm. Yeah, those are the kinds of things I'm working on too. Yeah, absolutely leeway, Aaron. So the so you don't have to disassemble a device at all. So that's something to be clear about first of all. Like so it's something that this could just be a device you know about. Like you don't even have to have it physically with you. So in the new digital archaeology project, like the revision Plan B, there are three options for what story you tell about an object. The point is still to think about an object, but the prehistory part of it, that's something you will need to probably disassemble it to figure that out. And so if that's not an option for you, then the other two options are viable still. So those other two options are what I call the lived history of an object. So if it's just something that you have and then you can tell a story about it, that's acceptable. Like for example, my PC, I kind of just gave you that living history of that PC. There's a specific moment I bought this, and I would have to kind of go back through some records to remember what that was. A couple of key events in its life, but one of them was its death. So, which there was a whole interesting story about that. But that would be the lived history of that object. The afterlife is something that you have to speculate about, probably, because we don't know. But that's something where you have to really use your imagination, but also research like the materials. So I don't know what this. Yeah, I mean it's just a basic steel case with some plastic components. So what would happen to this if I recycled it? Like if I took this to Best Buy and said I don't want this anymore, can you recycle it? First of all, they would probably say no, or they may charge me to take it. But whatever happens to it in the future, right? I can speculate. So there are things you can learn, and we'll look at some things about e-waste and kind of come up with our best guess about what will happen to things. And then you're telling that story. Whichever of those stories you tell, I want you to use something like Timeline.js to tell that story, something that lets you reference specific points in time. Timeline.js also lets you have a time range, so you can be vague about it sometimes, or you use an educated guess to say sometime in this range, something this event happened. But it still has this kind of event by event by event structure, which I think is really useful. And one of the goals for this class is that you're learning how to use technology like that to tell stories and get ideas across. So I do want you to use something like Timeline.js. Originally we were going to use a Omeka, but it's not worth the effort at this point. So Timeline.js is pretty accessible, and most people find it it works okay once they get used to it. So let me know how that goes if you have any questions about it. But that's the plan. So Aaron, take a look at the Plan B version of the assignment. Those things should be spelled out in there. But if it's not clear, then definitely feel free to ask. Okay, so what else? All right, so yeah, as far as topics, right? I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to look at the two This American Life podcasts. This is something that I would really like to hear your thoughts about, and I have seen several comments in Slack, so that's good. But I think hearing from more people would be great if we can have that conversation on Friday, let's say, because I think there's some things to work through. I mean, it's things that like you can answer, but then there might be like a follow up discussion about, right? I mean, there are two big things going on with those two stories. First of all, there's the content. Like there's these set of claims that Mike Daisey makes about what's going on, what he encounters at Foxconn. And then there's also, so that's one question. The other question is kind of the reliability of Mike Daisey as he tells that story, because if we end up not believing him, then that leads us to question our idea about what's going on and what the problems are. And so if we're unsure if we can rely on Mike Daisey, we have to look elsewhere to figure out what the actual situation is at Foxconn and what's going on with that. If you recall from Phone Story, the suicide level, where the workers are jumping out of the building, you have the trampoline going back and forth, that's the one of the things that is or was or could be an issue still at Foxconn. So that's something that we can learn about, like what is the most recent information about that. So that's something that we can do on Friday together, perhaps. And the other thing, too, kind of tangentially with all that, is the way that the podcast format helps tell those stories. A couple of you commented on that, like the idea that there is a, let's see, what is Austin saying? Yeah, it is. Right. So I think it also makes a good point that the way that Mike Daisey tells the story has an emotional arc to it. Like he pulls you into it with his storytelling. And if the facts of his story were different, like if he told the story of the literal things that he did, they may not be nearly as dramatic or as emotionally compelling. And also just like they might not be, he might not tell them the same way. So I think that's important. There's a key moment though in the retraction episode that I would like to play for you all, but I haven't actually tested how the audio comes through on this, and so I don't want to take the risk of like that sounding terrible because it's a really key moment, and I want to make sure we have a chance to talk about it. So I'll practice. I'll try that out, and then on Friday we can look at it. But there's a couple key moments in that retraction episode that are incredibly tense, that are really uncomfortable to listen to, and I'm really interested in how the editors of that podcast used editing, like used the structure to create that sense of discomfort, because it's really compelling. Like it really makes you pay attention to it. So that's something that I want to spend some time thinking about together on Friday, I think. Okay, so I don't know what else I was going to cover. I think that's about it. Oh yeah, so I'll just mention a couple of other things here. I started writing this FAQ as a roadmap to how to complete the semester, but I ended up kind of getting into the learning outcomes a little bit, mainly to kind of explain how the dots are connecting in terms of why we're doing the things that we're still doing. It gets a little wordy, honestly, so I feel like I might just rewrite this to be more simple. But basically, I wanted to make it clear what our basic goals are, and ultimately for this class, I'm interested in you having, like building some skill, like actually getting some experience with tools you haven't used before and getting better at them if you've already used them. And that's something we can still do, and I think it's still important. That's something that happens in the archaeology project with Timeline.js, something that happens in the methodology project with whichever tools you choose for that. The other big thing is that I want you to leave this class with a sense of your digital identity and using your domain to be the center of that. So that's something that some of you are already kind of doing, but I want everyone to have that opportunity, and I do want to have a conversation with each of you about your goals for your domain. That's something that we can have that conversation through different formats, obviously, but it's something I think is different for everyone, and so I think it's still a useful thing to discuss and make clear, to make sure that your domain, and when I say that, I mean like your equivalent of zachwhalen.net as opposed to a subdomain. I want to make sure that everyone has that when they leave this class. So that ultimately is the final container for everything. So that's something that is the common denominator. Yeah, so I think going forward, what we'll do, as I said in the checklist, we'll keep touching base like this somehow, or something similar to this Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'll do sessions at 10 and 11, and it'll either be Twitch or Zoom or the big blue button thing, or maybe just a chat sometimes, a text chat. There's a few people who I still haven't heard from on the forums, so I'm going to be reaching out to them to see if they, see what their issue is, if they had a hard time connecting or what. But I have heard from most of you in one form or another, so I feel like that's good. But the mechanism may change a little bit. Just make sure you're paying attention to Canvas announcements mainly as I adapt those methods a little bit. Otherwise, use the checklist. Like the checklist should give you the guide to things. I'll put a link to the checklist in the FAQ page and on the home page, and send it through an announcement. So to make sure you have as many ways to get that as possible. Okay, so yeah, I think I'm about out of things to tell you, so I'll stay on here for a few minutes in case you have questions I can try to answer here. So yeah, I'll just let me know. One thing I might do actually with this Twitch channel, Twitch is set up for streaming game content. I don't have like a gaming setup. My PS4 doesn't work, or it barely works. I have a lot of technology that doesn't work. So I don't know if I'll do that, but I might, like my most viewed YouTube video that I've put out, it has a lot of views because it's been up there for years now, but I put up a YouTube video demonstrating how to unlock the Easter egg in a really old Atari game called Adventure, and it was the first game in which there was an Easter egg that players actually discovered. An Easter egg is like a hidden piece of content. So in Adventure, if you know how to get to it, there's a secret room that has the programmer's name written on the room, Warren Robinette. It was the first thing like that. So I know how to get it, and it's not, well. I mean, it takes a bit of luck basically, but if you're lucky, you can get it in a few minutes. If not, it might take you an hour or so. So I might stream that at some point just to have some game related content on here. Oh, big content. Somebody just posted something. Okay, great. Oh yeah, Maddie. Yeah, yeah. That's the thing. So these kinds of posts on Slack are kind of like, I mean, it works obviously, but it's something that this kind of post might work better in Canvas because you could have a longer discussion with these ideas. Slack is also good for quick chat kind of things. Yeah. Okay. So Maddie's saying everything else is asynchronous. Yeah, and so I'm glad to hear that the live stream is working for you. That's good. Great. So yeah, like I said, I'll wrap up in a few minutes. But if you have any questions or other thoughts, that'd be great. Be happy to chat. Yeah, I agree. So Maddie's noting that you can hear when our glass talks to Kathy, like you can hear her as a person, and it almost sounds like when you contrast that with how Mike Daisy characterizes her. I think you hear her, like I hear her much differently. Like the version of her that I picture in my head, it becomes different when I hear her actual voice, as opposed to Mike Daisy's caricature of her. It's almost a stereotypes characterization of this translator that helped him. And so I think that's definitely something that comes through in audio. And you're right, it is not journalism, it is theater. But the thing with theater is that things can be, and truth, as you say here, Maddie. I mean, truth can be. I mean, literature can be true. Theater can be true. It's just not true in the same way that we think journalism is true. Like we expect journalists to have a pretty high standard for verifying their facts and citing their sources. Not so much in theater, but we still can change our mind based on something we hear in a play. So yeah, it's this weird issue. I mean, it's kind of like we talked about with the Web Literacy Project. Like we have to have a working definition of truth. We all do already have a working definition of truth, but to actually produce something, we have to think about that and sometimes modify what we think of as true, or not as what we think of as true, but what we think of as a way to know if something is true. And I think genre does play a role. I think Ira Glass is kind of impatient with that that argument, but I think it's true ultimately that genre is, we have different ways to think about things depending on what genre we receive it in. I'm noticing my bit rate is going down, by the way. I don't know what that means, but I'm looking at my stream manager and it says my bit rate is going down. So you might be seeing that as a loss in quality, but I don't know. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap it up here pretty soon. I see Austin's typing something, so I'm kind of waiting to see if he's typing something that he wants me to respond to on the stream. I don't know if y'all can see, but I can see that Austin Napier is typing. So I'm kind of waiting for him to type, but after that, I'm going to shut down the stream, go for a walk. I did post the streams from Monday on YouTube, so check it out. Oh, great, there it is. There's Austin's thought. And again, this is the kind of post that would be, it's like you've written it like a forum post more so than a Slack message, but that's all right. Yeah. It's a good, interesting distinction there. You say that they call his act fiction, but fiction. I think as when we think of fiction, we often think of it as like the opposite of truth or opposite of nonfiction. But really, both of those are just genres, like different ways of getting things across. But you're right that, as Allison points out, like there was a fair bit of deception. Like Daisy knew what he was doing. Like he should have realized that his work would be perceived differently in this different format. So yeah, I mean, it definitely makes a difference. So. Okay, great. So I'm going to wrap it up. So check out announcements for another type of session. I might do. So I might do a Zoom thing later. And Austin's point in the Twitch chat is a good one. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to put those discussion forums. Like I'm going to start those in Canvas, so you can post responses like this um, to those forums or message boards or discussion threads, whatever you want to call them. And then we can keep Slack a bit more lively or short-term kind of things. So yeah. Okay, so stay tuned for announcements to see if I come up with another way for us to chat and maybe have more people, on camera than just me. I think that would be great. But yeah, otherwise, be well, I guess. Hang out, do whatever you need to, and let me know if I can help with anything. If you have any questions or issues or concerns or anxieties, feel free to reach out. You should know how to do that by now. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.